All by yourself, you can have a conversation with one person, but when you can bring a group of valuable thinkers together at the same time, there is really just no end to the music that everyone can make together. And it isn't mystical, and it's not magical, and it's not ethereal. Your customers will notice it, and your investors will notice it, and your future team members will thank you for it.
Welcome to Curiously Stuck, the show where we unpack the stuck moments, curious leaps, and behind-the-scenes pivots of becoming a business leader, especially when you never quite planned on being in the big seat. I'm your host, Chelsea Stuck, former sales manager, now brand strategist. And this episode is for anyone in the C-suite, leading teams, or building companies, whether you're in manufacturing, distribution, food service, or an industry far beyond that. If you're trying to make sense of the future of your business, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about collaboration, not as a buzzword, but as a strategic tool, one that sharpens how we lead, market, and sell. I'm joined by Lauren Colbert of Filament, a company that helps teams think better together, and you are in for a real treat. We'll explore how leaders can turn collaboration from a chaotic group activity into a focused muscle that delivers better decisions, stronger marketing, and more authentic sales. Lauren, I am so happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Chelsea, and cheers.
Cheers. I think I need a spot of tea.
Oh, this is coffee. I'm cheating, but I always drink coffee in a teacup.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because it makes me feel special. And there's a whole, I don't know, I have probably 50 different teacups, and I choose the one that I'm feeling that day so that I can enjoy my coffee all the more. Plus, the tiny little cup forces me to get up more often.
I do the same thing with Starbucks mugs, and they're from different cities that I've traveled to. And every morning I'm like, is it a Miami morning or is it a Hawaii morning? Are we in Chicago today?
To where will I travel with my coffee today? Yes, that I love it. I love all of that. It's part of the imagination that can wander while drinking coffee.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. You know, we've met a couple years ago, I think at this point now, and I had the pleasure of going through an exercise with you about a year ago at Mark Schaefer's retreat, the Uprising retreat. And I just can't say enough how much it was amazing to watch you work. And what was amazing is how, you know, you really got that room thinking. And because of that experience, whenever I was going down this route of launching a podcast, I instantly thought of you, and I thought, oh my gosh, Lauren has so much to share and so much that we can learn from, because you commanded that room. Like, you just, so can you give us just a flavor to start out with, you know, what is it that you do at Filament, and, you know, why collaboration matters?
Two great questions. At Filament, I'm a facilitator. We design, host, and facilitate the whole meeting. And at Filament, we have about 10,000 square feet of dedicated meeting space. And you may be thinking, you know, why would anyone ever need that much meeting space? But it is how we use this space at Filament that is so intentional and then important to the collaboration we do. And as you said at the beginning, we help teams and help people meet better together. And we believe that they think better together when they meet better, because meetings are broken, and they've been broken for too long. And COVID made that worse because people believed that they could have really effective conversations, not just online, but in a hybrid environment. So at Filament in St. Louis, with our space, we have a dedicated room for our large team work, and we are entirely analog, meaning we don't show PowerPoint. We don't use PowerPoint. We don't allow our clients to use PowerPoint. We have no screens in the facility. And we have a live graphic artist, our live illustrator, that catches all the key insights and learnings through the day and is there with us every time we facilitate. So myself and then our founder, Matt Holman, he's the other facilitator, and our illustrator, Todd. And I often joke that Filament runs on Todd 1.0 because he's in the room always catching the key insights and learnings and then drawing our exercises and the things that people say that are really profound, those mic drop moments, those funny moments, the hard moments. All the memorable moments are captured on the floor to ceiling whiteboards in what we call our boardroom because of those boards. And then all of the tables are set up in there for the group work. We use cardstock and markers for people to capture their learning and do their group work. We have a fabulous break room that is just full of every, beverage and snack imaginable to help people feel really comfortable, welcome, safe, at home, and invited to do big thinking in our space with the questions that we ask at Filament. It's just a really collaborative, very creative, on purpose, designed like that on purpose, very insightful and innovative space.
In my past, we had what we called a beanbag room when I was at a manufacturer, and it was like all these beanbag chairs and big whiteboards, and I knew as a sales leader that the point was we were supposed to be comfortable, right? Because we're going to spend all day in this room and we're going to dream up big ideas and thoughts. But we were still at our space. So we were still close to work, right? You still walked out to get a drink of water and someone from customer service is passing you and grabbing you and whatnot. But also I didn't even think about if we would go offsite, and we did at times. Yeah, it was pretty much usually a hotel ballroom. I mean, that's usually where, you're in a meeting room. And some are nicer than others, but I never thought about that in relation to collaboration.
Mm.
So that's really interesting. So it sounds very purposeful in what you've designed.
Very much so. The tables that are inside of the boardroom portion, the large group meeting room, those are all 3 or 4 top tables. And we have short chairs. We have short chairs with no arms. We have short chairs with arms. We have tall chairs. We have soft chairs that are up against the wall. We have rolly chairs, whatever someone needs to really accommodate either their physical needs or their thinking needs. And then there's the space for people to walk around, because a lot of people ideate well when they're up and they're walking around.
Yeah.
But the 3 and the 4 top tables, those are called campfires. A campfire table, and think about a campfire. A campfire brings people in and you want to be close because you'll share an intimate story and it'll be warm, and the room is set for 85 people. But even in a room set for 85 people, you can be in your circle and your campfire space with your 3 or your 4 people, and you can have a conversation across the table. And while there's sound in the room, you aren't competing. You're not in a high school gymnasium. You aren't having to shout over the other person. There aren't these screaming echoes in your ears, but you can have an actual conversation about the things that are on the table in front of you while you're enjoying your coffee or your sparkling water. And then when people go to do larger group collaboration, they go out into our space that's called the playroom, which is set up with 8 different vignettes of couch, chair, table, living room-esque style tables or dining room style look. And here's the difference between we were in our space and we went offsite, because we're an offsite.
Right.
Space holds memory. So if you've had an uncomfortable conversation in a boardroom or in a space where power dynamics have been unspoken but identified, when people walk into a conference room, they often have their chair or this is the spot that I usually sit. And there are identities that take shape in that room. Even when somebody's not in the room, they'll be like, oh, well, when Joe isn't here or when Sally isn't here, and they can actually gesture to an empty chair because that space holds that energy and that space holds that memory of when they were there and when they weren't there. Can make it really hard to transition and move further when someone's not in the room, and can also make it really hard for someone new to transition into the space. When people come into our space, it is different by design, and it's creative and innovative by design. And I've said nothing about the tools that we use that are really validated through science and psychology. And through our tools and methods in this intentionally designed space, we teach and train how to operationalize collaboration. Because it's not enough to say, hey, remember that one time we all got in a room and we kind of talked about things? And in that case, what happens? The loudest person is who they all agreed with, or the loudest person wins, or the quiet person had, nothing to contribute or said nothing and just went along with everything. And then the curse of the meeting after the meeting happens. Everyone leaves the room. What just happened? What just happened in there? Or I would look at you and say, Chelsea, I really fought for you in there. I wanted this to happen, but it didn't. They decided this. And now we have to do what they decided, versus taking ownership of having been in the room. Also, Chelsea, meetings are not a spectator sport. If you're in a meeting, there should be a reason why all of those people are in the same meeting at the same time. We have to get all that great thinking out onto the table.
I 100% agree. 2 things that you said that really, stick out to me. that I again, and this is why I wanted to have this discussion with you and talk through this, because it is so important. I mean, building a business now out on my own, not having that typical corporate structure that was already put in place for me, figuring it out. There's so many of us that are entrepreneurs that, you know, we believe in ourselves, we believe in our vision, we want to, make our mark, do it our way. And then there's things that don't come with you because you have to build it yourself. And one of those things that I've noticed is recognizing, I mean, I have a completely remote team. Now, that is because we were born and grew during COVID. I mean, I'd launched the company year old, COVID happens, I'd just been starting to think about setting down roots, planting roots and opening an office, and what did that look like? And so it completely forced me to pivot, which is a great thing in a lot of ways. But even I struggle to find ways to bring that collaborative muscle together, not just be, through a screen. And the funny thing that I guess I'm getting around to, that you point out, that I never thought about how you're right. When you have that shared space in the office, we always sat, when I was in the boardroom, in sales management, we always sat in the same spots.
Chair. Yeah.
And we were even in the beanbag room. We sat in the same kind of like
the same beanbag
clusters. The same beanbag, the same, it's like why I always pick a seat on the right or on the left in an airplane, right? We have those habits. But how, as leaders, do we help those that are more introverted speak up and feel confident in what they're asking and in their contributions? Because 9 times out of 10, somebody else is thinking it anyway, or maybe as a team, you haven't explored it further. Like you just sort of had that after the meeting and made a decision. And it can be to me, the death of teamwork, but also as a leader, like, oh, that hurts. Like, I want to know really what you think. What are we missing when we think about collaboration, and how should we approach it with teams?
It would be bold of me to assume that all leaders are missing the same thing or something. But what I can talk to is the value of the talent in your team. When we went through COVID and then the Great Resignation, and even now, as companies are utilizing and embracing tools that help them to do more, either better or faster than they did before. And there's a variety of tools. Without naming any of them, we all have adopted some form of tool that has expanded our capabilities. But it's the talent that we have hired. So if we are a leader and we are working with a team of people, it means we have talent at our fingertips. And it would then be short-sighted of any one person, whether they're in a leadership position or not, to believe that everything that they need to know is inside of their own head. That is someone who is not open to getting better or to growth. We call it the charismatic deviant. Leaders that are open to growth and remaining curious through that growth, who remain innovative through their collaboration and really embrace the talent that is at their fingertips. There are a handful of authors that have written about this extremely well. And I think that in Adam Grant's book, Think Again, he did that very well, to take what you think you know and be open to other perspectives. So we have these people on our teams for a reason. Remind ourselves why we have these people on our team and what else it is that they're capable of contributing. We also are not able physically to live long enough to make all the mistakes that we need to make that other people in the room have already made. And one of the filamental wisdoms that we like to share with individuals is that instead of calling something a failure, and I think this is one of the things that people prevent organizations from collaborating well. Collaboration means talking about what worked, what didn't work, and then the ideas you have. So when we talk about the ideas that we have, is there such a thing as a dumb idea? Absolutely. It's almost always good idea adjacent. And sometimes that is the shitty first draft, the thing that you just need to get out of your head as a morning page to like unplug, unstuck, move your thinking forward so you can say, well, here, this is a dumb idea, but let's embrace the spirit of what I'm thinking about. So then organizations can start thinking, okay, yes, you're right, and because I know this, and here's the data that proves that. And when you get in a room of people and you can spark creativity, even if it starts with a dumb idea, that's great.
I love that idea because I find even in creativity, in creating graphics, sometimes in video, all of the different things we're doing in marketing. If I can't get through and kind of, understand exactly what someone's picturing, giving them a shitty first draft, giving them that something to say no to and say, to your point, like, yeah, not this idea, but now they'll find the words and they'll find that, well, what don't you like about that? Well, what did we not consider in that? And so I think that that's been it's definitely been a game changer for me in shifting my thinking and my anxiety sometimes about getting it right the first time.
It is the curse of the people pleaser and the perfectionist. And I work very hard
Oh,
to be a recovering people pleaser myself, though I don't know that I've ever stepped too far away from perfectionist tendencies. Let me say it that way. So I said, what works, what doesn't work, and then ideas, good ideas and bad ideas. The structures and the tools that we use through our various exercises at Filament really help to walk through iterations of ideas, different ideas, and we have forms that even allow people to generate their easy ideas, their hard ones, their safe, and their crazy ideas. So we say something like an easy idea that we could start with right away, a safe bet that no one would question, some hard ideas we could begin to explore, and then something so crazy that it just might work. That is actually a framework for a tool that we use at Filament where we can get a group of people together to start thinking that way. And Chelsea, you may say, I have an easy idea, and I'll be thinking, wow, that sounds really hard. But I don't question
yeah.
your label of easy. We just write it down in the easy vessel. And then we continue moving forward. And once we're done generating our ideas in our collaborative breakout group, then the group can select from there, from the bad ideas, from the good ideas, from the safe ones, from the hard ones. It can select the ones that they like best, and then they come up with a new version of it. And then it's the idea of the group, which helps with buy-in, and then they can take it to the next level.
Yep.
And we believe that an idea is slightly smaller than an experiment. An experiment is slightly smaller than a pilot. A pilot is slightly smaller than a program, and a program is slightly smaller than an initiative. And what often happens is in an organization, especially with leaders or people who are trained to move really quickly or not question someone of authority's thinking, I have an
Oh
idea.
boy.
Let's initiate that without taking the time to test it, to prove it. And I don't mean like years. I mean sometimes days. I mean sometimes a week's worth of research or some version of the collaborative elements in the room, the thinkers in the room can actually help contribute to this in a way that our speed is not just efficient, but it's effective because we've given it all the credit and the thought that we need to. So when you have the time to go through an idea and generate the best one, and then develop an experiment, something small, fast, cheap, and easy, you can decide if the juice is worth the squeeze. Like, do we have the time for this? Do we have the resources for this? Do we have the talent for this? And if so, what are we going to stop doing so that we can allow to make room for this one moving forward and whatever the idea is? I'm giving you some really vague examples, but industry agnostic and profit or non, these are some of the steps that I would think of taking someone through when they're trying to generate ideas. The other thing is what doesn't work. What doesn't work in collaboration? And it's not putting forth what you think is your greatest idea because of fear. And all of it. I
Ooh.
fear and I hesitate. Why do you hesitate? Why would you ever hesitate, Chelsea? Just as an example.
Oh, I mean, the fear of the judgment
Mhm.
or, being thought of, that kind of to your point before, like, oh, it's a dumb idea or that it might not go anywhere, the rejection. I mean,
Mhm.
all of those. I
Mhm.
mean, it's, we internalize, I think, sometimes, you know, so much of what's going to happen next and that fear of the unknown. And, I will say that, and I mean, you've gotten to know me. Like I'm pretty vocal and like willing to put my ideas out there. But I've had to learn one thing I really had to hone in on, especially as I came up in the ranks, is that because I can be probably come off even more confident than I am in whatever the idea is, because I'm just a passionate person, right?
Mhm.
And I think that you probably share this, right? When you're passionate and you're articulate and you just are energetic, that can cause other people to either just say yes and go along and agree because they're afraid. And that's something I've had to learn to tone down or to find the appropriate level of my passion in it and make sure that, there's room for other ideas. And I watch, we have a lot of clients and so I get insights into a lot of different team dynamics. And this is something I can really sniff out right away whenever there's, either someone that they feel they can't cross or, someone that is that passionate person. Maybe they're a little misunderstood, like I had to own it. So then the people around me would know, like, hey, if I'm in that mode, just tell me and I'll tone it down or, or like speak up anyway. And that's kind of that self-awareness muscle I had to learn. But I can see it. And that's part of why I wanted to talk to you about this because, I was so impressed whenever you led a very dynamic group of marketers through an exercise. And I remember getting stumped on the questions and like, oh, I was getting so frustrated.
Well, so when you're in these spaces, one of the things that we do very well at Filament is that we squash politics, sweep away eggshells, and balance power.
I like
And we do this through the tools that we've developed. And we have about 130 different tools and exercises that we use that support operationalized collaboration and innovation.
Wow.
Strategic planning, we can help develop purpose, principles, promises, and priorities, and then really big problem solving. So when the leaders come to us, that's what we get to walk them through. But what leaders hesitate with and what they don't like to talk about is the fear that they have or what they presume will be identified as failure, true failure, versus thinking about this as an opportunity to say, I've learned something. So we have a reframe for that. We once had a leader in that was from a large electronic energy organization. And she said, okay, we're going to stop calling this failure and we're going to flip the script on this and we're going to start calling it tuition. Here's why. You and I have all paid to learn something. We'll pay to take a course. We paid to take a class. Maybe we've got higher education that we're continuing to pursue. We'll always pay to learn, like even a course on cooking or anything. We'll pay to learn something. But we don't want to have to pay to take the same class twice. We never have. So if we can reframe a failure or something that didn't work like we hoped it would as tuition, I have learned that lesson. Now, Chelsea, what I need to do as a true collaborator and to continue to learn is to share with my team, and this comes from your culture, to share with my team what I tried and in the ways that it can be better, or what I tried and the way that it colossally failed. And I've paid the greatest amount of tuition. Here's the thing. If I don't talk about the tuition that I've learned or I've paid with the lessons I've learned, then I continue to watch other people take the same class.
Yeah.
So if I have an apple and you have an apple and we trade apples, we both still have one apple. But if I have an idea and I have tuition I've paid and I share my idea and my tuition that I've paid with you, then we get to multiply what we know and what we've learned. And like I said a moment ago, we cannot possibly live long enough to make all the mistakes and learn all the lessons and know all the things that we need to know to operate as a one-man show. And that's another value of truly collaborating, is understanding what doesn't work. So then what does work is real work in a room where we're asking better questions to get to the answers we need. And not the simple answers. Oh, we want to treat our customers well. Of course you do. But are we creating a space where our customers have the opportunity to continue to learn and grow? And this is what the value is of bringing in our sales teams, our marketing teams, our customer teams, and stitching it all together. So I will say that when I worked with Atomic Revenue, which is an organization that does revenue operations, we focused on the leads, the sales leads, and then the satisfaction, and then the advocacy development, right? And when you can move through an entire business development cycle, not just a sales cycle, but an entire business development cycle, and you have all your teams working and collaborating together, then the organization doesn't just have better messaging, cohesive messaging that transitions a client from their sales experience to the actual experience of being a customer to then being an advocate for the organization. It doesn't feel like a jerky handoff from one department to the next, but there's fluidity in the language of the actual organization because it was co-created by the leaders in the team and then disseminated like a ripple, like a drop in a bucket with far-reaching and ever-growing impact. That comes from great, inspiring, well-structured, intentional collaboration.
Tangentially, we as an organization, not we Crave, but as an organization that I worked for in the past, all read the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And we went through the process of getting everybody rowing together. And that was, we went through the way we are. And there was a lot of work that was put in as an executive leadership and then all the way through the entire company to get everybody rowing together. And when we were all aligned, the most amazing part about it is that we would make those lists, right? We put up we called it wouldn't it be amazing if it was the exercise that we were walked through, right? And we'd put up all these crazy ideas, right?
Yes.
And, I've done this with organizations, not that I'm a facilitator, but, just trying to get kind of a vibe for where they want to go with their strategy, their sales, their marketing. And the awesome part about it, to align with what you were saying, is that after a year, because this was over years that I participated in this, right? And so after a year, we'd look back at that list. And even though we all were aligned under, 3 or 4 major goals, because you have to make it realistic what we can accomplish as a team, we could check 5 or 6 other things off the list that just happened naturally, because now we were all working towards the same goal. We were all aligned. We were all beating the same drum. And the power of that was pretty darn amazing.
Organizational momentum is profound.
It's hard to do. When I say it's hard to do, I don't mean that in a discouraging way. I mean it in that you have to truly be committed. And I watched that the people that were committed got the most out of it. And you could always tell when someone wasn't going to stick around long or just really wasn't feeling, the whole vibe. And that's a whole other discussion in leadership and what you do about it and how you approach that. But what I can say is that it worked. We grew that business, and it was a great guiding light as a salesperson and manager who then was always articulating it through marketing. It was a great way to know that what I was doing, everybody had my back. Everybody was, we were all on the same team. And that was a really good feeling, especially I was remote then too. And so, that can be hard.
Distributed teams can be challenging.
Yeah.
I think that the intentional part.
Let's talk about that just for a second. Like, what are your feelings about collaboration and remote teams or distributed teams?
We like to call them distributed because remote can indicate that there's a stronger us versus them. Versus, so those of us in like headquarters or the home office or people who are in the space to like drive in a couple of times a week versus those that are really not close and can only come in during an annual retreat, for example. So if everyone's distributed, then it's slightly easier to talk about than the home office staff and then the staff that's not here. So we are a distributed workforce. That's one way that we support that. And then you can be all virtual, or you can be all in the same room. The thing that we do not advocate for and say is entirely broken is hybrid. If we were all in the same office, like let's say, for example, Chelsea, you and I are in the same building, but we're going to meet with some other members of our distributed team. We should all remain in our office, in our space, because we are inviting someone in also, and we need to have the same type of setup so that you and I are not then having a conversation with the people in the room around the table and we're having our own private moment or saying something and like talking under our breath and laughing and joking about something that is decidedly distracting, and then separating the experience for those that are in a different town and distributed at a greater distance. So to level that playing field is the most important aspect of working in a distributed team. That's the first thing that I'll say. Hybrid doesn't work. Hybrid is broken. There is not a way to fix the human dynamic of a hybrid situation. If you have a team and humans show up, the first thing that an organization needs to do is commit to collaborating in the same way all the time, which is everyone would show up in their same virtual Brady Bunch square, right? So then the other parts of this in a distributed team are really focusing on the norms of collaboration. And if this is something that a team can set in stone and really identify what their purpose is, their principles, their promises, their priorities. So purpose is our North Star. Why do we get out of bed in the morning? Our promises we make to those that we serve. For example, I said for Filament, we're different by design. We are entirely analog, no death by PowerPoint, and we can guarantee engagement. So those are the promises that we make to those that we serve. And then our principles, which are the ways that we work. At Filament, for example, we work joyfully. I hope I can remember all these. We work joyfully, we experiment fearlessly, we engage inclusively, we help generously, and I'll come up with it later. I always forget one. But those are our principles, and they're the guides for how we work. And they are specific for internal and external facing things. And they beat the pants off of mission, vision, values, because mission, vision, values can oftentimes get so diluted because we want to put it on a wall, but we want our customers to see it and we want to be able to repeat it, that we come up with single words like integrity and passion and right. And they're nothing that you can dispute. They are not labels of an organization that help make a decision on whether or not I want to do business with them or even whether or not I want to work there. So those are some things that we intentionally do also for distributed and in-person teams that help to clarify and refine what it is we do here and why we're doing it. So in the norms of collaboration, and I'm just going to hit you with some letter P's. So this segment of this call is brought to you by the letter P. So thank you, Sesame Street. And then we really invite the pause. Pausing is hard. Pausing is hard for me. I am very blirtatious.
No.
It is who I am. And it can be something that I continue to work on.
Sure.
But pausing can also be considered intellectual hang time. Need to let a thought cook. Need to give the room just a pause for something to simmer. This really supports introverts. It challenges sometimes extroverts, but we can really gain value from a pause, and that should be a collaborative tool. These are all muscles we don't flex real often. And collaboration's hard, Chelsea, because we don't practice. We don't flex this muscle ever. We said we did once. Remember that one time we did that thing? No, we have to practice. It has to be intentional. So we're going to pause. Paraphrase and pose questions are the two tools that we can use to seek clarity. Paraphrasing, not reflective. Oh, Chelsea, what I hear you saying is another way to say this. And then I insert my own organic language, which really helps to support, am I able to articulate what you're saying? And in the way I did that, did someone in the room also grab onto the idea a little harder, a little stronger, and really enjoy the language that was shared? Posing questions, paraphrasing. Posing questions can be, all right, pause, I'm curious. And it's where you really label your curiosity and you use your curiosity. That supports collaboration and innovation in the best ways, is to remain curious, right? Curiously stuck. So we're pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table. Everyone in a meeting should be in the room for a reason.
Yes.
If you are not in the room for a reason, then you should not be there. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy. Don't waste your company's dollars. Meeting math is another fun thing we could do later. That's another episode. But putting ideas on the table is the reason why somebody's in the room to support collaboration in the first place. And while they're there, if they can provide data where available, and I don't mean overwhelming data, not in the form of an infodemic. We don't need so much data that we can't even sort through it, but valuable data. Data showed the last time we tried this, it either worked for these reasons or didn't work so well for these reasons. Now let's adjust and shift accordingly and really be able to use your data, put your ideas on the table and provide data in ways that advance collaborative efforts so that things can be made better the next time. Pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data. Paying attention to self and others. Really important, because when you're paying attention to self and others in a room, that can feel like there's an energy to that. You can see when somebody crosses their arms. You can see when someone has their idea face and they take a deep breath, or you can see when somebody's really noodling on something and they start to do that stare off into space drift because they're really thinking, like whatever their quirk is. But paying attention to self and others is also so important in a distributed workforce. that camera on is non-negotiable. Not negotiable.
100% agree.
We're already distracted by so much of what's happening. I often say in distributed meetings, I was like, and for those of you that are online shopping right now, I need you to close that window. And there's always somebody that's like, how did she know I was doing that? I'm like, see, you're not in this meeting. I need you in this meeting, right? Paying attention to self and others.
Right.
And then the last one is presuming positive intention. And I'm not assuming globally. There's nothing we can do about global positive intention. But what we can do is understand why this team gathered, what our purpose is, what are our promises to those that we serve, what are the principles for the actions that we take, what is the question, why did we all gather here today? And let's assume that all of us, we're presuming positive intention, that all of us are working toward the same goal. And when we can do those things in collaborative environments, distributed or not distributed, every single time, that framing of the room and that launch of the creativity and the way that we're going to have our conversation supports collaboration fundamentals, like from the get-go. This is how we're going to operate.
Lauren, this has just been a wealth of information and really a lot to think about. And I know that, out there's a lot of salespeople that might be watching this. There's certainly marketers that are watching this. And then of course there's leadership. And I think we've done a great job of covering, on the leadership level and how we should be thinking and why to do these things. But if you're out there, as a salesperson or a marketer, what's one thing we can do to exercise this muscle better, this collaborative muscle? Like, is there any tips or tricks that you have that just something we can start with until we get, the big meeting? Because you've got me all inspired and I'm thinking of 8 million different things and I need to be present with you and be paying attention instead of off in my brain.
But you're definitely allowed to have amazing thoughts and to wander. So to wrap it up, I will say, if you are not practicing collaborative thinking, collaborative thoughts on a daily basis in some small way, and I mean small, start small,
Okay.
then collaboration is just a buzzword for you. But if you start to practice it, this starts with you plus one, and you build your challenge network. You either build your challenge network internally in your organization, or if your culture does not support that yet, find a place that does. Be a part of that culture shift. I do challenge people to be a part of that culture shift, to be a part of that dynamic always. And then build or find a network that supports collaborative thinking and perspective taking, and put yourself in a room of people smarter than you on purpose. And it's one of the things that I value so greatly about going to the uprising. Every time I've done that, I'm in a room full of people I admire, I respect. They all, yes, it is. Put yourself in a room full of people that blow your mind, and then listen, absorb, ask questions. Sales doesn't have to be an island, and marketing doesn't have to beat the defense drum all day, because I know that they do. I've been in that seat. I've been in sales. I know how isolating some of those positions can feel. And when you work together with your organization, and it can be small, it can be, a solopreneur, build a network of other solopreneurs. It can be really small startups. There's me plus so-and-so in my basement. They can be huge organizations where we're going to send this year's batch of advanced leaders to be developed, or, whatever size organization it is. Find value in the conversation and think of better questions to ask, absorb it, and then put some of those things into practice. And a tiny practice that I'll give all of you, this little nugget to take every single day: ask yourself a different question about the vitamin C's. So I'm going to give you another piece of alliteration. We do this at Filament. We do this in our Slack channel, and it is our daily stand-up. So everybody has a stand-up in a slightly different way. This is our daily stand-up because we are sometimes distributed. Curiosity. We have a question about our commitment, our collaboration, and our celebration. And those are our vitamin C's. For example, our curiosity question will be, what's one thing that you're exploring today that is going to make work easier for you? For our celebration, it's who has who's been a standout on the team, or who do you want to give a shout out to because they've gone above and beyond? These are really quick examples. Commitment.
Yeah, they're great.
What is something that you're committed to completing before the end of the day, and what are you going to do to allow that to happen? And then the collaborative part is, in what ways can the team help you, or relative to your commitment, what are you committed to doing today, and who on our team might you need to help get that done? Or what would you like to get an extra set of eyes on? Or what kind of ideas do you want to bounce off of someone? And those are really tiny transactional nuggets of practicing collaboration on a regular basis. Some people are far more advanced than that, and others heard what I just said and said, ain't no way, that's going to be hard, right? And there's going to be a little bit of that in between.
Sure.
So whatever works for someone to practice, and then I mean remain wildly curious, committed to collaboration, dedicated to innovation, and super committed to improving the human condition. And you are going to be in a great spot to start thinking about collaboration as a strategic tool to make sure that you're firing on all cylinders and it's working together. All by yourself, you can have a conversation with one person. Okay, great. That was very stimulating. That was very exciting. It made me think of something I've never thought of before. Or I helped them. Like, in what ways did we contribute to one another? And then another one-on-one conversation here. But when you can bring a group of valuable thinkers together at the same time, focused on the same experience, then there is really just no end to the music that everyone can make together. And it isn't mystical, and it's not magical, and it's not ethereal. It doesn't take luck. It is intentional. And the impacts are magnified over time with those thinkers. And when you practice and flex that muscle, you know that you can experience that really robust sensation of collaboration in your organization. Your customers will notice it. Your revenue will notice it. And your investors will notice it, and your future team members will thank you for it.
It's truly a muscle. I mean, like I said, you really opened my brain in my mind into thinking about it that way when we first started talking about this. And I'm so glad to get to delve deeper and hear more about it. It is obvious that coming in and doing, a collaborative exercise, effort, meetings, facilitation would just be
a day at Filament would change your life.
It sounds like it, and it sounds like I need to be booking that for my team immediately. So how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
You're on LinkedIn all the time. I'm absolutely on LinkedIn. Lauren Colbert on LinkedIn. And our website, which is meetfilament.com. And we have some really basic information on there. Whether you need a team of 5 or a team of 85, or if you're hosting the 1,000-person conference, we have a wide variety of services that we really do cater to our clients. Like, what does our client need, and what makes it easier to work with us and harder to work with us? And we try to find a great balance in between there. So the most common gathering at Filament is for a day, then often 2 days, and then occasionally 3 days, depending on what an organization needs or how we have designed their collaborative experience.
Well, to my food service and hospitality friends out there, I think you need to 1-800-LAUREN immediately because, like I said, just through my experience alone, it was amazing, what we got out in a group exercise at the Uprising. So,
and that was just an hour. Like, that was such a tiny little nugget. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love hearing that. Thank you so much.
But you left us with cards and worksheets, and like, there was so much to it. Like it carried with me, I guess is the point. And to the point that, again, when I was launching the podcast, and it's all about, the whole point is to talk to people, like yourself, about things that I'm curious about and things that I think other leaders should be thinking about. And this was ranked way high up there. And I would love to even, think about a part 2 sometime after maybe we've had some sessions together or something like that. So,
that would be fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. And to you, viewer and listener, kudos to you for committing to this experience and learning what you've learned here. And don't hesitate to reach out and ask any kinds of questions. Let us know that you've listened and what key insight you learned and what question you have next.
Thanks so much.